normally I talk a little bit, get, catch up, and some of the best stuff comes out right in the beginning. And I didn't want to miss that because we have so many mutual friends. I was just listening to your interview with Ryan and with Andy Stump, and of course, Clint hooked us up and all that stuff like that. And it was funny because I was wondering, in 2003, I was doing a presentation for LAPD, who was starting to cross train with Naval Special Warfare with some stuff. And I couldn't break through. I'd done something at Team 4 with some guys, and all the combatives was going to be on the West Coast.
Okay.
So they say, well, you got to get to the West Coast. They got to talk to you there. And so, long story short, it was this crazy thing, and I'm rambling here. This show's about you, not about me, but you'll appreciate this. I went to the Hotel Del, and I'm looking around, and I'm fascinated with you guys. I'm fascinated with SEALs. I'm fascinated with military. I just and I start running on the beach, wondering if I'm going to see anything. And back then, all there was a sign, no trespassing.
Right.
The beach was open. And I see Bud's classes going on, and I just start running. And I'm running towards the compound. And I'm thinking, like, what are you doing? And I kept running, and I had a point of contact. Do you remember Mike Jaco?
Mike Jaco. No, I don't remember that name.
Okay. So he was my point of contact. I got a name from somebody at Team 4 who said, he's the guy running combatives. And so I knew that if somebody tackled me and stuck an M4 in my face, I don't know if there were M4s back then, and said, I'd go, Mike Jaco, I'm here. Like I'm lost. But I ran on the beach. My heart was pounding. I kept waiting for like some round to drop me or something. But it was the funniest thing. That was my first day at Naval Special Warfare, was trying to sneak onto the compound. But
yeah, it's crazy. Like there wasn't really any security there for the majority of my early years in, I guess, and the preceding years before that. So anybody could just run down the beach. And of course, in Buds, we'd love it when we're doing the shirt off run on Friday. And then some of these ladies from town or whatever else would run down the beach and pass by. And, it was one of the perks. But yeah, there was hardly everybody could go by. Now I think there's a sign and somebody that stands there that might walk down to stop you if you try to trespass.
I suspect that things have increased as far as or improved in as far as that goes. But anyways, my audience, mostly law enforcement, mostly military, CrossFitters, Type A people. So my audience is your audience, right? In that sense. And why I reached out is I read, somebody sent me your recent town hall article, and where you just talked about, like, hey, like, these are some things you need to think about if you are surrounded by like the craziness going on. And I don't know when you probably wrote that just within the last month and a half, because it was after that incident where the mom was hysterically calling 911, and they said, you'll have to phone, the city hall to ridiculous shit.
Yeah.
But you wrote in there a couple of things that really touched me. Obviously you're a talented writer, and your background, and anybody who doesn't know your background, you're not allowed to listen to the rest of the interview. But 20 years Navy SEAL, 3 books, but you've been a warrior, and I was fascinated in learning more about you. Just that you were a voracious reader as a youngster and wanted to do that. But this call is really, I want to talk to you more as an American, as a patriot, as a dad, as somebody who clearly is really concerned. And you've studied civilization, you've studied history. When you were leading people into battle, you really tried to understand your enemy. And I want to talk to you really about that and where you see us going. Like, I'm talking about America right now. Have we gone too far? Do we have to crumble like Rome? What is, share some thoughts on that, man.
Yeah, so it's obviously a very, let's say, interesting time, and it's a heartbreaking time to be a citizen of this country and watch what's going on around us. So it's a tough time to be in a situation where a lot of us feel, I think, that almost like our back is against the wall in a lot of respects. And I don't mean that literally, although in some cases that's true, but more in a figurative sense, and that the institutions that were put in place to preserve certain rights for us, certain natural rights, over the years, those have eroded quite a bit. And then we've seen this whole establishment from, we're seeing it in sports, we see it in tech, we see it in finance, we see it in academia. We see all these institutions almost subverted by forces that are polar opposite of those institutions that were put in place to protect our natural rights. And so to not have a recourse because that side seems to, anyway, have co-opted all of the major institutions of culture. Now we still have the right and left on the side in the political spectrum, but when we talk about culture, when we talk about social media, when we talk about literature, when we talk about movies, when we talk about sports, and all the entities that control those institutions, it's almost like they're subverting the very foundation that gave them the opportunities to succeed and thrive in this amazing country. So it's a tough time as far as that stuff goes. And then, on the tactical side of the house, kind of where the rubber meets the road, why I wrote that article for Town Hall a little bit ago is because I think about this stuff all the time, being a student of the fight, a student of warfare, a student of the hunt, student of the genre of writing. I keep thinking if my wife takes a turn and goes down some road and is all of a sudden surrounded by a mob, which happened here in Utah. We live in Park City, in a ski town, but just an hour away in Provo, you might have seen it, there was an SUV stopped by one of these mobs, and a guy just pulled out a pistol and fired around with feet away from the head of the driver, who then drove off and survived. But I thought, what if my wife takes this turn and is surrounded? There's some things that I can, something we can talk about. I can tell her to do. We have a special needs child who might be in the back that's not mobile in case she has to leave that vehicle and hard point somewhere or get away, which is not ideal because your vehicle does provide some level of protection, as you obviously know. So I just started thinking about those things and then put them down in this article for Town Hall, and it seemed to have resonated with quite a few people out there.
Yeah, well, it got to me, and one of the one of the most important parts that really jumped out at me is, when I'm coaching people, whether I'm dealing with military law enforcement, but just the general public, I try to remind them that all of us are human weapons and we're designed to survive. And it was weird. It was almost like there were a few things in that article that were so close to things that I really believe and really share. One was about the power of intuition, and you shared that Cicero quote, and then that it's a God-given right to defend yourself. The biggest thing, and you alluded to accurately, like people knee-jerk react. Got to buy a gun. I got to get this. And you talked about the need for training. Most people will never get the type of training that you were given. And I wanted you to talk about this, because even like most cops don't get the training they need. That's obvious, every day. In fact, I got so crazy upset with what was going on that I started training cops for free online as best I could. I just got insane with it. But amazing. The thing that I tell them, Jack, is this over and over again. It's the Steinbeck quote that you talked about. At the end of the day, I'm going to screw it up. I wrote it down here. Is that the purpose of fighting to win? There's no possible victory in defense. The sword is more important than the shield. Oh my God, I wrote it down wrong. The rest of it.
Yeah. The brain is more important than either.
Right.
Yeah.
And the final weapon is the brain. All this is supplemental. Yeah. Right. And so classic quote that I butchered there. But I've always told people, like, mindset is everything at the end of the day. And I wanted you to talk about this, that because I always say, like, when I hear experts, they talk about keep your head on a swivel, get off the X, situational awareness, everything. And I go, you know what? If that were all that was needed, no one would ever get ambushed. if all you
Right.
need, right? But even hunters of men, really trained people, have been ambushed. So there's
Sure.
something deeper there. And what I try to get into everybody, whether it's the soccer mom or the tier one operators, to realize like this, that if you are compromised, you need to just remember you're a human weapon. You're a fucking human weapon. You're designed to survive. And I wanted to kind of like tee that up and have you just like philosophize a little bit on, yes, you need training, but at the end of the day, it's your intuition and your mindset that is going to save the day. Not,
Oh, yeah.
not, yeah.
Yeah, that's been something that's kept us alive from the beginning of time, is that that sixth sense, that intuition, trusting your instincts. Former special forces sniper told me years ago, before I even went into the military, and he was a Vietnam era guy, and he said, hey, if something doesn't look right, it's probably not. Like,
Right.
so trust it. If something doesn't look right, call it JDLR, just doesn't look right.
Yeah.
And so that was before I went into the military. And when we talk about training, it's people don't need, I mean, the training I did was amazing for a certain job. It was great. But you don't need that level of training. It's fun to go out there and do those things, but you can also get some basics that will help you not just survive, but prevail. Because in the end, yeah, survival is great, but prevailing in a certain situation, like that's what I'm after. And I did a lot of this training before I even went into the military, because this was pre-internet days. I knew I wanted to be a SEAL from a very early age. So I was studying warfare, studying terrorism, studying insurgencies and counterinsurgencies, reading novels that had protagonists with backgrounds that I wanted to have one day. And I was training, because I realized, yeah, I'm watching Rocky, I'm watching Rambo movies, I'm watching Commando, but I need to learn how to fight here. I can watch it on TV, but that's a little different. So like most people, I got into the martial arts through the Taekwondo. So just a local place, you walk in, you do your things, you learn your kicks, you're doing your katas, you're doing your sparring. It doesn't really look like the same type of sparring you're seeing and when people are boxing. So that's kind of sinking in. And then I was very lucky in that one of the instructors there took me aside and taught me how to box. And so now I'm had the Taekwondo, some of a little bit of the Thai boxing in there, but then the Western boxing, and I hadn't put it all together yet. That took another couple of years until I found Jeet Kune Do. So I found out that. So in the late 80s, early 90s, before UFC and before mixed martial arts and combatives and all the rest of it, that wasn't a bad place to be.
Sure.
Taking useful, discarding what's useless. Bruce Lee's philosophy there, taking everything from Greco-Roman wrestling, fencing, Eskrima, Arnis, Western boxing, putting all those things together in something that was more practical. And so I love that. And especially when they incorporated Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in the early 90s before anyone had even heard of it. And back then, if you could, do a double leg takedown and put somebody in a rear naked choke, get to the mount, do a couple of things from guard, like you were pretty good. That was a pretty solid foundation if you put all that together. And then, of course, with the rise of UFC and mixed martial arts, it is much better than it always was to begin with to avoid confrontation. But when you're a young guy out there, you're doing all your training and you get that testosterone flowing, and you're going to the SEAL teams, you want to test yourself a little bit, but not recommended today. But point being, all that training came well before the military. And then as soon as I could get to a range and seek out competent training with a pistol, and back then it was mostly Vietnam era guys that were training. So got into pistol and shotgun and rifle, just doing anything I possibly could to prepare myself for where I was going in the SEAL. So I was very fortunate that I got to do all that. And I had that drive to seek things out before the internet made it so easy. I mean, you actually had to go to phone books, rip pages out, go to different towns from different phone books and rip pages out, make calls and try to figure out who was training, how you could get them to help you out, what their background was, which wasn't as easy as doing a search and figuring out if someone was legit or not. So I did all that pre-military, and people can still do that today. And it's a lot easier to check on people's backgrounds, find references, find referrals. You don't have to travel across the country to find somebody. Like I thought I had to go all the way to Virginia Beach to find Frank Cucci, because he was a former SEAL and he was doing jiu-jitsu and he was on the cover of this magazine that I got. Well, today there's probably someone a lot closer than flying across the country to get in, train with, learn those basics, get a little more comfortable in that interpersonal, self-defense, that violent, that area that's just so off-putting to people because you're so close and it's such a visceral, violent thing. So to do a little bit of that, and all that really adds up to paying attention to that sixth sense, and avoiding those confrontations. So all that training really only comes into play when you're surprised, when you're ambushed, when things go wrong, you don't listen to that intuition and you end up on that X. You end up in that situation where you're in your car and you have kids in the back and one's in a car seat and people are pounding on the hood, pounding on the windows, and you don't know what to do. So unfortunately, these are things that we have to think about, but we've really all had to think about these things. And the only reason that we're here today is because we had ancestors that were good at listening to that sixth sense, that were good at fighting, that were good at hunting, good at providing for the tribe, defending the family. So that's the only reason we're here today. So we should probably listen to that that sixth sense and talk to our kids about listening to that sixth sense and not worried about being so polite if something doesn't seem quite right, getting out of those situations and using what my E&E kit was my getaway sticks, my legs, to get out of there and avoid a situation.
I love that. And it totally resonates with, I've been studying violence, fear, and aggression for 43 years teaching. I started teaching in 1977. Wow. And I, why I love that article and love your message is it's, I make this joke, hey, how did cavemen fight? It's like it's one of my, like a, if this self-defense stuff doesn't work out for me, I'll be a shitty stand-up comedian. So I do this little shtick where I go, how do you think cavemen fought? Like, was there like a caveman kung fu studio and a caveman karate studio? And I talk about your instincts, your picking up danger, and I talk about the 3 I's, your instincts and your intuition inform you. And now what you do with those messages is your intelligence. Most people shut it down. I live in a bubble, cognitive dissonance. You use the term in your article. You talk about outsourcing, and I love that because on an interview that I did a couple of years ago with Jack Donovan, I was describing the problem that society has gotten so comfortable that, and he said, yeah, we've outsourced our safety, and I love that, and there it was in your article about, hey, there was a time where if you couldn't hunt and you couldn't fight, you didn't have a birthday party next year, probably.
That's right. You weren't long for this world.
Right. So I loved all that. I want to, and I wanted to talk about when you're describing your whole martial art journey, it almost parallels mine. I started in Taekwondo. I got into a fight in school where it was, and I'd wrestled as a kid and got into a fight in school where I couldn't solve it with my Taekwondo because of proxemics and the way it happened. And although I didn't get my ass kicked, I was like confused. I knew I was missing something. So I turned to Western boxing. And I want everyone listening to this is what I did intuitively and what you did as your career is we start to gather tools, equipment, where like a toolbox. Oh shit, if I get taken to the ground, jiu-jitsu. Or what if he's got an improvised weapon, a Eskrima, Kali, okay. Or what if he's got a knife? I'll get a knife. And it wasn't so much that it was philosophically eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, but it was filling our toolbox. And what I started doing something that was, I jokingly refer to as Fight Club before Fight Club. In the 80s, every month we get together and beat the shit out of each other and film it with VHS. Nice. But we would always do these scenarios, Jack. It would never be you and I fight. It would be go stand over there, pretend you're at a bar, 2 guys are going to come up to you, and it would be like a scenario shit. And I noticed that nobody did what they thought they were going to do. And the rules of engagement were you weren't allowed to preemptively nail somebody. So I always would make a joke, and you'll appreciate this. I always say, especially when I'm working with professionals, I go, the only people who are cool, calm, and collected in a violent encounter are snipers, because they're nowhere near the bad guy. Everyone else is like, fuck, like he's right there. And so it's a little joke that you can appreciate. And but where I'm going with this little kind of like rambling monologue here is when I would get people to fight through scenarios, they never did what they thought they were going to do. So our cognitive brain, our executive function goes like theoretically, I go, Jack, what would you do if a guy stuck a gun in your face? And now what you do is you visualize that and then you download the answers. And you go, well, I parry the gun here, I do this Jackie Chan move here, and then I do this John Wick move. And what would you do if he took you down? What if it was 2 guys? And we hold all these complex motor skills in our mind. But if a stimulus is introduced too quickly, and this is the basis of the system that I now teach, is our reptilian brain, our hijacks, limbic system, amygdala can hijack our complex motor skill. And now we're flinching, we're moving in a way. And so what I started doing is teaching people how to get a harmonious dance between the reactive holy shit moment and the complex motor skill, so we can recalibrate as fast as we can. And people love it once they understand it. But the big thing, and I wanted to like bounce this off you because you've got those decades in there and you've done stuff. And again, inspired by your article, is citizens who listen to this and they go, I need to protect my family. I need to protect myself. I'm going to get training. And this thought is just crystallizing in my mind. Most of us, when we hear somebody like you, who's an influencer, an expert, right? And whether that's your intention or not, you got a voice, you got a following. People trust you. You're very down to earth. They know your background's real. And you go, listen, you got to think about this shit. The world is changing. And imagine if this was your family. Because when I asked you about this, like, you talked about your obsession with martial arts and tactical fitness and all that. And I wanted to, and I'm doing this in the worst way possible, because I'm not being succinct here, because I'm just crystallizing this here. So bear with me. Is you were obsessed, and you said something, I don't know if everyone listening really picked up on that. You were already a fucking killer before you went to the teams. You were already going, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to be ready. What's happening now to people is people going, I'm not ready. I don't want to be doing this. Oh, I'll sign up for jiu-jitsu. I'll buy a gun. I'm going to get a bow and arrow. I'm going to get a knife. And I don't know that there's anything to say, and maybe I'm just rambling here, but I want to share with people, like, at the end of the day, there's got to be a connection between your emotional, psychological self and why you want to do these things. Because you can't just buy like a jiu-jitsu rank. Like, you can't fake endurance and you can't fake skill. I don't know if I'm making any sense there. Is there anything you can?
No, it becomes part of, and it used to be something that you had to do. And like we talked about, only in very recent human history, in just a blink of an eye, really, if you look at the amount of time we've been on this earth, have we been able to outsource some of these things and make it through life without knowing how to fight, without knowing how to provide for the family. It's a very recent development, and it's not a natural development. And we could very easily go back to what we were for most of human history. And I think people are starting to realize that now, whether and maybe they're just kind of subliminally figuring that out as they're watching the news, and they're figuring out, what if this came to my business while I was there? What if this came to my house? What if, and pre-riots, well, you know what? I went to the grocery store and there was like one thing of meat left. What if there was one thing of meat left and that was it for months? Okay, maybe I need to think about my family situation. What steps can I take now? And what can I do? And that's the best thing that we can do, is take lessons from things, and not just take those lessons and not write them down and just give them a nod, but then act on that information. Turn that experience that we've had over the last few months into something that helps us going forward. And not just as an individual, but for those of us that have kids, the kids are looking at all this and they can see the same situation in a few different ways, depending on how those parents frame it. They can listen to the parents in the kitchen talking about, hey, I don't know how we're going to pay the mortgage next month because I haven't had a job for a couple of months here. You know what? How are we going to eat? Like, our freezer's almost gone. I went to the grocery store a couple of days ago and there wasn't much left. How are we going to pay the credit card bills? Or the exact same conversation, the kids can hear the parents talking about, hey, we weren't as prepared as we could have been for this. So going forward, these are the changes we're going to make. And we're going to have this financial foundation that allows us to live within our means and have that backup, so that if something happens and we aren't able to work for a few months, well, we have that. And every family is going to be different, whether it's 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever that is. And you know what? we're going to get a fridge, and maybe we're going to learn how to hunt, but in the very least, I'm going to get some freeze dried stuff. I'm going to get some water. We're going to get a filter for some water in case we turn the tap on and it comes out all brown. So we're going to do these basic things. Hey, do we have a fire extinguisher in the house? We should probably have one on the first level and the second level of this house. And we should teach the kids how to use them. We should go outside or go camping, build a little fire, teach them how to use it. So the first time they're putting out a fire isn't when there's an actual fire that's threatening their lives or the lives of the kid in the crib or whatever else. So the most important thing is to take these lessons of the last few months and then apply them going forward. So for those people that they want to buy a weapon, well, obviously training is the most important part of that purchase. You don't just get that weapon, buy some ammo and be good. Well, you know what? Now you have to invest in the training. Just like you just don't buy a gi and maybe roll once, you invest in that training, maybe staying in shape, getting the house prepared. So there are different things. Everybody's going to take different lessons from the last few months, but the most important thing is acting on that and not going back to, oh, whew, that was a close one. Looks good. We're all good now, and not prepared for the future, because society is fragile. And if the last few months have taught us anything, it's that society is very fragile. And we've been lulled into this false sense of complacency because we've had it so good for so long. And going forward, that might not be the case. It might be, things might correct, and we might get another generation of being able to survive being soft. But I think it's a very natural thing for us, especially as providers and protectors of our family, to want to be prepared, because in the past it was a need. You had to be, and you still can today. It's not too late.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for saving my my feeble attempt to say something there. You saved me, pulled a rabbit out of the hat there. Because at the end of the day, like tie what Jack said there to this question: what would it cost you if you didn't fight back? What would it cost you? And it could cost you everything. And so it's a scary time. You talked about this. Maybe the pendulum's going to swing. We're going to be okay. Maybe we get another generation. You're not just a fan of history, and fan's probably not the right word. You studied it to survive battle. What are your thoughts on our current enemy? You alluded to some stuff right in the beginning that were pretty heavy, because we've got, we've never seen censorship like this. Like whoever they are, don't even hide. It used to be like if somebody was going to manipulate something, they at least tried to hide in the shadows. It's like now it's right out there. The level of censorship, the mainstream media, which just reports whatever it wants to. It's insanity there. So for the question here is, you've studied all of these different, battles over the years. Talk to us about our current enemy and what we need to be thinking and doing.
Yeah, it's a crazy time, and up is down, right is left, right is wrong. It's an insane time, and that's for us as adults. Imagine our children trying to figure this out with all the inputs they had, especially being so connected, which we weren't as kids, because that stuff didn't exist. A good example is today, the day that we're doing this. We're recording this on September 17th, and this is Constitution Day in our country. So I posted a picture today that are 4 items, and there are 4 things that I gave my kids when at my military retirement ceremony. So I gave them a Bible and an old school compass, and that's to guide them. I gave them a leather-bound copy of the Constitution as a reminder of our freedoms and natural rights. And I gave them a Winkler tomahawk to represent the means and the will to defend them. And so you can put, I was curious. So usually I have a tech person that helps me out with the graphics or anything like that I do on social media or wherever else, and like the website updates and that sort of thing. And so we did an experiment. You can boost things on social media. You can like pay $5 or $10 to boost a post. And we've done it with, like, when the book comes out, there'll be a picture of the book, and we boost that so it gets out there a little more, I guess, I don't know. But we did it with this picture today, and talking about those gifts I gave my kids. Remember, Bible, Constitution, compass, tomahawk. Guess what? Denied. Yep. Wow. Instagram, Facebook, denied. Not allowed to boost that for some reason. There's not a gun in it. because we've had that happen before, even with videos that promote the books, little trailer type videos that have guns in them. They've denied that before in the past because there's guns in there, and movies ones have guns in there. So that's anyway very strange. But this case, no guns in this. Not overtly political, other than just saying, "Hey, today is Constitution Day, and this is what I gifted my kids at my military retirement. Here's why." But yeah, so even that level of censorship, and that's amazing. I mean, that bar is, it's tough to clear that bar if you're trying to get the word out there, or you're not, or try to say something that is not in line with the technocrats' thinking, which is, it's an interesting time to be alive, which also gives me a lot to play with in the fictional realm of my novel. I think some of those big tech might turn into some of the bad guys in the next novels that might have to get taken care of.
Yeah, that'd be nice. It'd be nice. When something like that happens, the censorship, like, are you detached enough through your experiences to go, that's just the way it is, we need to adapt now, or does that shit freak you out, or like do you get really like pissed at that and stew on that, or is it a blank?
This was an experiment, so I was curious if they would allow it or not, and I kind of thought that they would, because the other ones that they have not allowed have had guns in them, although it's not selling guns, which is I think what they actually say in something that you click that says you won't sell guns on there, and so somehow they tie just having a photo of a gun to that, even though there's no sale of anything involved. So at this stage, because I've been in this space for a couple years, and I had it happen to a video that was to promote a novel, one of the novels, and so it wasn't like brand new. It wasn't shocked by it, if that makes sense. But it did reinforce just how much censorship there is out there, and at what level it's at. It's not at that, oh, you're trying to sell a gun level, we don't believe in the Second Amendment. We're at the First Amendment level here, where they're subliminally trying to influence the populace, and they're doing so in a very effective way, especially with allies in almost every significant cultural industry in the country.
So I'm almost looking at this, the battle. It's like never been anything. If George Orwell were alive now, he'd go like, wow, like 1984 is like a joke. That's a cartoon compared to what's going on here. Because something like that, you have, like a legitimate warrior who risked his life for the country, going, these are my beliefs, this is gifts to my kid, and I just want to share what I did on this day. And they're going, no, you can't, we don't want to know who you are, what you do as a parent. We don't want anyone else to get any, ideas about that. But there'll be some, bullshit Antifa posts that won't get,
Exactly.
Censored.
Exactly. So my kids will see that one, but they won't see this one.
Right. And what do you think? So in terms of studying like strategy and battle, because I look at this and like I'm confused by the leadership on both sides, and going, well, like, what are we doing? Like, how do you let Portland go on for that many days, or what happened in Seattle, or the way cops are getting thrown under the bus and blah blah blah. But it looks like these insurgents have more organization than the good guys. And any thoughts on that? I know this is kind of like tricky stuff, and you don't want to, there's not too much you want to say on a podcast like this. But what do we need to do? If I said, guess what, you're in charge of the country for a couple of days, what are some big things that would happen in terms of this would be allowed, this would not be allowed, this is what I want people to be thinking and doing? Any crazy thoughts on that as a writer?
Yeah, well, it's tough to talk about because it's so disheartening to me, especially as a student of history, because what I see when people do their however many letters and characters you can put into a tweet, or however many sound bites you can get from on the news for 2 minutes, a minute, 30 seconds, however long that you get. Well, that doesn't really put into context all the history that has led up to this day and has brought us as a species to where we are right now. There's a lot of knee-jerk reactions. There's a lot of people repeating what they hear other people say, and those other people who say them are not necessarily well versed in the history that brought us to where we are today. So for me, it's disheartening and it's heartbreaking just thinking about, because I always think of things from my military background and my family's background in the military. I lost a grandfather in World War II, killed near the end of the war, but we can trace our lineage back to the beginning of this country. And I think about all those people who sacrificed everything, their lives, their fortunes, of course, their sacred honor, and then those who left parts of them behind on the battlefields in this country and all around the world to ensure that we could have these freedoms that we have today, so that we could go to a street corner and that we could say whatever we want and not be shot down by the king's soldiers. And today, when we talk about the rise of big tech and their really monopoly on information, which people have not really had in the past. When the printing press came out, people thought that was the end of the world. Well, now that street corner where you used to be able to say things and not fear for your life, well, now that street corner is big tech. We're not out there in the street corner anymore. We're not in the parks anymore. We're not marching somewhere to have meetings, because now we're all on these devices, and this is the street corner right here. And there's a select group who has gotten very wealthy off controlling that street corner. So they're interesting things to grapple with, that's for sure. Yes, there are probably some answers out there, but the long-term strategy of those who want to really subvert our freedoms and our rights, they've been at it for a while. And they've been very successful in co-opting the cultural institutions in this country. And I don't know if there's a way to come back from that. And it pains me to say that. So what I do is I think it back, okay, I can think about that strategically. I can be a little bit, and it can be disheartening, but then I'll take it down at the tactical level. I'll think about those things I can do to protect my family, those things I can do to prepare my family, those things that I can pass on to my kids so that they do the same with their families. And then what I can do to kind of influence the populace through popular culture is through my novels. So people reach off the shelf and they grab something, they think it's just a spy thriller, but they're also getting a little bit of education in hunting and conservation, and in the Second Amendment, our rights, our freedoms, and it's kind of woven into the storyline, not as an overarching theme, but as just a foundation, because the main character has these beliefs that are very similar to mine. So that's a little thing that I can do, not much, but it's a little something. So that's kind of how I look at it.
It's huge, because you're right. It is because this shift to where we are, it feels like it's overnight for people who've been sleeping. But if you listen to any of those KGB interviews, stuff like this has been going on for decades, and you could tell that the evidence of it, if you're not catching up, is you look at like lawyers and professors and university professors, people getting arrested in these riots, and you're going, wait a minute, that's like a grown-up who probably has a kid who's out there going, I hate the police, and they're freaking out, and they're going, oh, you're a school teacher, you're a nurse, it's all over the place. It's like Manchurian Candidate on steroids, like people that have just been brainwashed. It's insane.
Yeah, it's a tough time, but it just goes to show the power of social media and big tech. We've never seen anything like it in the history of the world. It has global reach, and it's something that we need to end. It's addictive. I mean, we know that dopamine hit that we get every time we get a like or we look at something, and the kids are growing up with it. Like, we came to it a lot later. I just came to it 2 years ago. I never had any social media presence in the military because I could only see it. I couldn't see it doing any good, and which is interesting now. If you come in and you're going to go kind of to the darker side of special operations or intelligence circles, now not having that background is the red flag. So it's an interesting thing that the military and the intelligence services have to grapple with now. But our kids are growing up with it from day one. They're addicted right out of the crib. It's tough as a parent because that's how they communicate with their friends. And so it's a tough time to be a parent, tough time to be a kid. And I think that what most of us can do is, one, vote, and two, keep our aperture open and educate our kids, because they're probably not just getting it at school, the opposite side, but they're probably getting it through all those tweets and those posts that do get boosted by big tech because they're in line with that thinking. So yeah, it's definitely a tough time to be coming up in this country, but that base level of preparedness, that doesn't change. Like, we have a responsibility, we have an obligation to defend our families, an obligation to provide for our families. And if we're going to do that at that base level, that's going to then allow us to take a breath and go do those other things in life, like build businesses and take vacations and paint and sculpt or whatever else it is. Well, you have to have that base taken care of. You have to be able to fight, defend your family, and provide for that family as well. You know what that takes? It takes skill, it takes learning, and it takes incorporating that into your life. So I think that's been an eye opener for a lot of people, which is why we're seeing gun sales skyrocket. And I bet we'll see more people getting into those, into combatives, more people joining boxing gyms, more people getting out, learning how to hunt, because they've seen what can happen. They've seen how fragile society is and realize that, oh, I have an obligation to do these things for my family. I better get after it.
I dig it. Last couple of questions. Are there any resources, groups, friends that are creating this type of education on a bigger scale? Like you just shared like a personal message to people. Hey, here's my guidance. Here's what I think you should do. This is what, and you live it. This is what one man's done to do what he can to protect his family and his kids. Are there any places that you could recommend, give a shout out to, or things that you're involved with, where there's a lot of people, like, if I go, I need a gun, I don't try to figure out how to build one. I go to a gun shop. So there's a resource. And then I say to the guy there, do you guys give lessons? You know, if somebody wants to get into all of this, are there people that you would point them to?
Yeah, and I think that's why who we follow on social media, if we're active on those platforms, is important. It's important who you follow, and to find those trusted voices out there so they can point you in the right directions when you're ready to take those next steps. So, I mean, there's also so much information out there. So for the person that's just stepping into this, I can see it being overwhelming. I mean, I grew up with it. It was my personal life. It was my professional life. Now it's both mixed together as I moved out of the military. So there's a lot of information out there today. And a quick Google search will tell you, you could spend your rest of your life researching what to do without actually doing it, which is another danger with anything in life. It doesn't have to be this, it can be anything you want to do. You can research to your heart's content and never take that next step. So there are definitely, I mean, I'm going to miss a bunch of them here, but mostly it's about finding trusted people like you. And if you can't get into your classes, well, it's following you and getting to know, okay, this is who he's recommended in the past. Well, that person is near me, or that works out, right? This might work into my schedule, even though I can't go spend a week with Tony. You know what I can do? He just recommended, he was at this course down the street here with this other person who, this looks legit. Tony says he's good. I'm going to go out there and check this out. And maybe he or she introduces me to somebody else, and you start slowly building that network of trusted agents that you can reach out to then say, hey, have you trained with a pistol, or what do you carry? Or, point me in the right direction. Oh, Clinton Heidi Smith out at Thunder Ranch. You know what? I have a week coming up and I can drive to Thunder Ranch and they have a spot open in this class. You know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to take that next step. And do I have a gun? Oh, no. What do I do? Can I call them? Can I borrow one? Maybe. So it's just asking those questions, finding those trusted agents, building out that network so that when you are investing that time, not just the money, but the time, most importantly, it's with competent people, and you're making the most of that time, making the most effective and efficient use of that most valuable asset. So that's probably the most important part, is not wasting that time going to someone and saying, ooh, this guy didn't really make any sense, or that guy was a little crazy, or whatever it is. But it's developing that network of trusted agents that can point you in the right direction. There's so many great guys out there in combative space and in the tactical shooting space. There's just so many of them across the country these days that you will be able to find them. But build out that network. And if you can't get to somebody that you want to train with, well, look at who they've trained with and who they endorse. And you'll slowly start taking these steps to build that foundation and then move forward and refine those skills. So just because of where I am and my history with them, I love going out to Thunder Ranch. When Pat McNamara stops through town, I'll shoot with him. When Larry Vickers comes, I'll shoot with him. Kyle Lamb, I'll shoot with him. There's so many great guys out there to train with. Really the problem is going to be narrowing it down to your time, their schedule, your schedule, morphing them together and going out and doing it.
It's funny. some of the names that you mentioned, the people that I've had the honor and pleasure of working with over the years, like Pat, Kyle, man, those are, I forget how old I am. And the yeah, the one thing I would add to what Jack just told is to come back to, you know, if you don't do this and you just research it and it just stays there, like that is going to perpetuate like this unconscious kind of weight of like you're not doing shit, right? So don't procrastinate on it, and just visualize this. If you're going, I don't know, you know, things look like they're clearing up. I don't see. It was a buddy of mine, became quite close with him, named Steve Lucky, a Vietnam vet. But we were talking about stuff, and it was like 1993, and he said, "Experience is something you get shortly after you need it. Experience is something you get shortly after you need it." And I like, what a great line. I've been sharing it for decades since, because it's something happens to you, and now you realize right there, I didn't know what to do, or I could have been more efficient. And I think this last, you know, several months has exposed all of us as realizing, like, I didn't know I needed so much toilet paper. Okay, I didn't know I needed, you know, to know all this stuff. So
Well, that's exactly it. And then taking that experience and turning it into wisdom. And that's where we're acting upon something that happened, realizing maybe we weren't prepared, and taking the steps to get us to that next level so we're more prepared next time. So turning that into wisdom and then sharing those lessons with whatever our circle is, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a spouse and children, whether it's a spouse, children, and 5 followers on social media,
right.
or 20 million. So it's really sharing that wisdom so that other people don't have to learn those same lessons in blood. That's how we'd say it in the teams. But here it's just learning from that experience, passing on that information, passing on that wisdom to others so it can elevate all of us going forward. And that's turning it into wisdom is really, really the important next step there.
I dig that. And let's come full circle. Everyone listening to this, you talked about, you know, if you didn't know it, hunt and fight, that whole caveman metaphor. That all started with protecting the tribe. So who's your tribe? Is it just you and your family, your 5 followers, your best friends? Because now you've got that collective, and if you've got a single-mindedness, you can come together, motivate each other, hold each other accountable to do some of these things and make those shifts. So I got one more question for you, man. I know you're busy, and you've probably got to go finish another book, because
That's right.
there's so much shit going on. You're going, oh my God, like this is like 10 books in a row. I can't believe. Like literally, if we went back in time 20 years and you wrote some of the stuff going on, people wouldn't publish it. They go like, that's too far fetched, man.
Yep, not believable. There's no way. Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of a weird question, and there may not even be an answer. So if you don't have one, that's fine. But you know, you've done like a bazillion podcasts and interviews because of the success of your novels. Is there a question that you've never been asked that you wish someone had said, I went like, how come nobody ever asked me about that? Something you just wanted to share or talk about?
Oh man, that is a good one. I think we talked about it in the beginning, which was those gifts, and I think I talked about them on one other podcast fairly recently because it came up naturally, and then it came up naturally today because of the topic and
Right.
because of the post on September 17th here. So that's one I think is important, and I don't really get asked too much about the kids and that sort of thing, but it's something I think about quite often because we have 3 of them, and my dog and my wife right outside this door here. And really, and this podcast has been great. It's been great talking to you. I've wanted to do it for years, so I'm so glad we finally got to sit down, even though it's virtual, and catch up a little bit. But yeah, it's really about thinking about the next generation and thinking about what we owe them through our actions today, at that tactical level, like we talked about, but then also with our votes and turning over a certain kind of country to them. And what are they going to be able to do? Are they going to have those same options and opportunities, or have we screwed it up so much where they won't? And that's something to think about. I think about it a lot. I don't necessarily talk about it too much on podcasts because usually we're talking about the books and my writing process and time in the military and that sort of thing. But what's really important is what kind of country we're turning over to that next generation. So that's something everybody needs to take a long, hard look at as we move forward here into November.
That's a heavy thought, and we'll leave it at that. Jack, thank you so much for your time. Good to finally meet you, and I look forward to bumping into you in the near future live. Shake your hand, say hi.
Awesome. Let's do it. I can't wait. You take care. And thank you for all you've done and continue to do for everyone, both in and out of uniform.
Thank you, buddy. Be safe.
Take care.